Hey everybody, welcome to the weekly news recap for the 2nd to the 8th of December 2024. So, this week, PC Gamer had a 25 most wanted PC games showcase thing that had way more than 25 games in it. So they had like their most wanted thing. We'll just go through those 25 games. To be honest, it's a little disappointing the games they chose because we know so little about any of them. But we'll go through them anyway. So 25 is Judas from Ghost Story Games. This is from Ken Levine, formerly of Bioshock Infinite. What's the name of the original? Irrational? Is it Irrational Games who did Bioshock? Anyway, I don't remember. They got shuttered. Ken Levine jumped ship and he's working on this new game, Judas, which is still very much Bioshock. But obviously he can't use the name anymore. We don't know when that's coming out. We don't even know if it's close to being coming out. If you remember the whole ordeal with Bioshock Infinite, it was restarted a number of times. Again, we don't know the state of this game right now, which is, again, is kind of going to be a running theme for these 25 games. Killing Floor 3, kind of surprising why it would be on the list. There's a lot of other games I would have put on here. It's just a shooter, right? Admittedly, I don't know much about Killing Floor. I always assumed it was like a horde co-op horde shooter thing with zombies. Maybe there's more to it than that, but I don't know. Anyway, early next year for that one. Control 2. We haven't even seen any like screenshots, concept art, anything. We don't even know what the story is about. We don't even know if Jesse Faden is the main character or anything like that. All we know is Control 2 is happening. Why it shouldn't be on this list anyway. Crescent County actually has something to show for itself. So Crescent County is this indie game that is kind of a combination like racing game, postal delivery thing, and like a kind of lifestyle sim. So the deal is you're like a teen witch. You have like a postal job, and you have your like motorbike that's also a witch's broom, or a witch's broom that behaves like a motorbike. Who knows? On the weekends you're doing racing, illegal street racing with your witch broom bike thing, and you can mod it and have it all do all sorts of things. During the week, you're delivering posts around the village and getting to know people and living your general teen life. Anyway, at least we actually have some fucking footage. I mean, to be fair, there was footage for Killing Floor 3, but it was as a CG trailer, so that doesn't count. It's not gameplay. Anyway, release, no idea. Probably next year at some point. Citizen Sleeper 2 actually did get a release date, so it's coming out end of January of next year. So January 31st, 2025. We'll skip ahead. So a lot of... I was going to say, a lot of the PC Gamer Showcase thing, their most wanted thing, was in developer interviews, behind the scenes things and stuff like that, which is all really good, but obviously doesn't play very well when I have the audio muted. So we're just going to skip to the gameplay section of things, but it was a very interesting like interview and stuff. Anyway, Citizen Sleeper 2, it's not clear if you are playing the same sleeper from the first game or if this is a new sleeper. I kind of read somewhere that it's a new sleeper, but I haven't been able to find that article since, so I don't know if that's true or not. But yeah, a game that actually has something to show for itself on the most wanted, that's fine, and it's actually coming out soon, that's also fine. The original Citizen Sleeper was a very good sort of bridge between like a tabletop role-playing game and a video game, but it really dived more into the like how your dice rolls can really just change what your plan is for the game, for the day, for whatever. You might have a plan that I'm going to focus on this thing, and you roll your dice. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm going to do something else, I guess. Which really gets into how tabletop role-playing works. Like, you might have a plan, but the dice don't know about your plan and don't care about your plan. So things might go differently for you. Anyway, Citizen Sleeper 2, yeah, January, end of January. Perfect Dark. Now there is a video of Perfect Dark going around. This is the Perfect Dark remake / reboot / whatever from the Initiative, and also Crystal Dynamics, and also a bunch of other studios that have been on and off. This has kind of been in development hell for a very long time. The video that was shown off at one of the Xbox Game Showcase things looked very much fake. Did not believe that was real gameplay in any way whatsoever. So, yeah, putting this on the Most Wanted thing is, I might as well throw the Knights of the Old Republic remake on there. Like, sure, why not? I'll throw a Legacy of Kain remake on there. Why not? Just throw it there. Sure, because it's about as likely to be coming out soon as any of those. Menace I've never heard of, actually. It's kind of the only game on this list that I hadn't heard of before, but it is a kind of real-time, kind of squad-based tactics game. I think it's kind of set in this sort of, it's not like a post-apocalypse future, but it's like a kind of grim future, I guess. Way in the future, you're on like different planets and everything like that. I guess it's not quite going for the super grim dark, fucking Warhammer 40k stuff, but it's like not as grim, but it's on that spectrum somewhere. I think is the deal, is what they're going for. Yeah, I don't know. These kind of real-time tactics games I'm not a huge fan of, because I just feel like there's too much going on at once, and I prefer the turn-based approach to them. So think of something like Commandos, I guess. It's probably close enough, but you have mechs and it's set in the future. Commandos is really more of a like World War II type thing. Anyway, that's Menace. I don't think that has a release date. Yeah, it's just next year at some stage. Another game that we know nothing about really, Mafia: The Old Country. It's a Mafia game, and that's kind of it. That's all we know. Next year at some stage, but who knows when. Dune Awakening, another. Not entirely sure what's going on at this game. Is this the survival MMO one, or is this a different one? Dune Awakening. Funcom's. Oh yeah, it's gonna be the MMO one because it's from the Conan Exiles guys. Yeah. Don't know. Again, really shouldn't be on the list because we know so little about it. But anyway, early next year. Witchbrook. Stardew Valley, basically, but you're a witch. That's kind of its deal. Witchbrook has the formula perfected. It's a cozy witch game that has kind of the, go live your life sim. I think the deal with Witchbrook is that it's kind of Harry Potter in a way, but like university instead. It's like a witch university, and you're living on campus, and then there's also an attached like college town sort of vibe going on with it. Skate is another one that's been in development hell for a very long time. I suppose it's technically Skate 3 or Skate 4, I suppose. Anyway, apparently there's going to be an early access thing at some stage, but not entirely sure when. 2025. The James Bond game from the IO Interactive guys, we know nothing. This is what we know. That screenshot. That's it. That's all we know about it. I mean, a James Bond game coming from the Hitman guys, like a Hitman game, but you're James Bond. Like, yes. Yeah, like, yes, that's perfect, right? But still, we know so little about it, when it's coming out, any of that kind of stuff. I feel like there are more games should be on the Most Wanted. It's a little insulting to other games that they're not up on the Most Wanted thing. Anyway, Atomfall also has a release date, March 27th. So Atomfall from Rebellion is... I think I've described it this way before, but it's like a UK Fallout in some ways. Fallout New Vegas, but it's like set in northern England. Again, they're interesting interviews, but they don't play well with no audio. So, like, I guess kind of like somewhere between Stalker and Fallout, but in the UK instead. That's Northern England-ish is kind of what they're going for. Anyway, end of March for that one, and it should be coming to basically everything except the Switch. Light No Fire There is a video for that. I don't know why they don't have the video for it. But anyway, Light No Fire is from Hello Games. There's the No Man's Sky people. So if No Man's Sky is like this big, sprawling universe of planets or galaxy, I'm not sure. Did they say it's a universe or a galaxy? I don't remember. It's like some quadrillion planets, something stupid like that. That's what No Man's Sky is. Light No Fire is way smaller. It's one planet, but it's like to scale one planet kind of thing. But it's going to be a similar type of thing, but I think it's going for more of like a medieval high fantasy kind of vibe to it, instead of No Man's Sky's like retro pop future kind of stuff. Anyway, no idea when that's going to be out. And do recall, when No Man's Sky launched originally, it was not well received. It's only now that it's had like a pretty great turnaround. Well, not now. Like it's been good for like 2 years now at this point. Anyway, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. Like, yeah, it's a remake. It's a very pretty looking remake, but I would again argue that the game already exists. You don't. The other games should be on this list. Is my point. Anyway, we don't know when this is coming out. Konami had said that they were like keen to get it out this year, but obviously they're running out of days, and you would think a game like this would get pretty sizable marketing push, so probably 2025. The Thing remastered shouldn't be on the most wanted anymore because it's out. It's out already, and it's out today, in fact, or today when this was done, which was Wednesday. So anyway, so The Thing remastered. Actually, we'll talk about this later in the new releases section. I'm gonna skip it. Wonder Stop is from Ivy Road, and it's also from creator behind Stanley Parable and The Beginner's Guide, which are kind of like satirical parody video games in some ways, or meta-narrative games, I suppose is the way to put it. Wonder Stop isn't really that, but it does feel like it has a kind of underlying bitter meta story going on. I'm not sure. So the idea is you're this former champion of the arena kind of thing, and you're getting burnt out from being in the arena for so long, and like it's just not your thing anymore. You don't want to be doing it anymore, and you feel, I know what will help me. I'll try to go do something like meditative and nice and wholesome or whatever. So they join a tea shop to like figure that is the complete opposite of what their former job was, and they're trying to like acclimate to that and try to get all that good feeling and try to work it through their burnout, and it's like it's not happening. It's just not happening at all. They need to address the underlying issue, and that's kind of what the story around Wonder Stop is. But the gameplay is going to be lifestyle sim stuff of you running a tea shop, but just maybe your character isn't like super into it the way a lot of other lifestyle sim things. You think about your farmer in Stardew Valley, like they always seem like they're very chipper and happy to be doing things, and everybody in the village. I know when you get further into Stardew Valley, you do start to see that not everybody is as chipper as they seem, but that is always the vibe you get from these kind of lifestyle sims. Anyway, moving on. Avowed, middle of February. Middle-ish of February, I guess, February 18th. So this is going to be by Obsidian Entertainment, which means it is an Xbox first-party game, which means it is exclusive to Xbox and PC, possibly forever, because they haven't specifically said that this one will make its way to PlayStation or Switch after a year or whatever. They have said that for Indiana Jones, but they haven't said it for Avowed. Anyway, Avowed is Skyrim, I guess. I know they don't want it to be described that way, but it kind of is exactly what it looks like, really. Obsidian's version of the Elder Scrolls. It is set technically in the Pillars of Eternity universe, so you could look at it as Pillars of Eternity 3. Although I think it's set between Pillars 1 and 2, so you could look at it as Pillars 1.5 or something like that. Or just a spin-off, I suppose. It's probably the easiest way to look at it. Anyway, Kingdom Come Deliverance, its release date has actually been moved up by a week. It was going to be coming out February in the teens somewhere, but it's now February 4th. But yeah, Kingdom Come Deliverance. I never got into the original, and the whole reason was you couldn't save Scum. that was the only reason. It's like, let me save Scum. Just let me do it. I'm not hurting anyone else. I'm just hurting myself. Just let me do it. I don't know. I should probably give it a shot again and just deal with the things not going the way I want them to. Anyway, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 looks like it's just going to be a bigger, bolder, better version of Kingdom Come Deliverance 1. Maybe they'll let you save Scum in this one. I don't know. Death Stranding 2. We have that one trailer and that's it. And that trailer made no sense. So we don't really have anything. It's allegedly 2025 at some point. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. Grand Theft Auto 6. Again, we have that one trailer. It'll be a Grand Theft Auto game. For all whatever that means. Will it actually come out in 2025? I don't know. I don't think so. Slay the Spire 2, I believe, is also a game that we don't have much information about. Also 2025 release. It's not clear if this is going to be going early access first or if it's going to be 1.0 straight out the game. Who knows? Slay the Spire, the original, did kick off like deck building card games. Kind of just there were a lot of them after Slay the Spire came out. If Slay the Spire 2 will have that same impact. I mean, if it's going to be the same kind of game, probably not. But if they really change things up, I don't know. Anyway, it's a lot of pressure to put on them. Monster Hunter Wilds. If anything, we probably know too much about Monster Hunter Wilds. So February 27th for this one. So Monster Hunter Wilds is kind of being seen as more of a follow-up to Monster Hunter World, as opposed to Monster Hunter Rise, which is actually the most recent one. Monster Hunter Worlds, though, definitely was the more popular, I guess. It did very, very well. I don't know. Monster Hunter Rise did well as well. I sound well too much. But Monster Hunter World did exceptionally well. So I guess they're kind of building more on that. From what I've seen and from gameplay-wise, you're definitely going to be expected to be a lot more... What's the way to put it? Messy, I guess? It's just very... There's a lot of monsters. They really seem to be piling in the idea that you're going to be fighting, like, the big monsters. Multiples of them at once. Now, I say multiples, it's going to be like 2 or 3. They're not going to go nuts and throw like 12 fucking Xenogres at you. That's not going to happen. But there's a lot. And usually you'd be one-on-one. And you see a lot of the videos, it is still one-on-one. But every now and then they have videos in there of you fighting like 3 or 4 of these big monsters. It's like, what the fuck? Like, this must be very late in the game or I'm going to get my ass kicked. But the small amount I played of the beta or the demo, yeah, it's pretty good. I liked it. And I do like their change, some of the changes they've made. I don't like that the main character is voiced, but we'll see how that goes. Doom the Dark Ages is another one where we just have a video and that's about it. I mean, it's gonna be a Doom game. It's you know, there's not a whole lot we really need to know about it, I suppose, but there were some pretty divisive changes between Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. It would be good to know if there are going to be more of those. The kind of Captain America shield mechanic is interesting. I would like to see how that works in first person. But otherwise, we don't really know too much. And Civ 7, it's a Civ game. Like, yeah, it's going to be incredible for the people who like those games, and astonishingly boring for the people who don't. I'm just not into those kind of games. Anyway, we're gonna move on ahead because there were way more than just those 25 games. So Craftlings, I'm gonna try to go through these fairly quickly, but Craftlings is kind of this fun sort of resource management Lemmings type thing. Skip to gameplay. Anyway, it's Lemmings, but also kind of Factorio at the same time. That's kind of Craftlings. Henry Halfhead is somewhat defies description. It's kind of like a sandboxy kind of thing. So a little bit Untitled Goose Game, Little Kitty Big City, Katamari Damacy in some ways. And the idea is Henry can kind of just become any of these objects and then take them over and animate them, and just do weird shit with them. And I guess you'll probably have a checklist of things to do as Henry. Anyway, 2025 for that at some point. Rogue Eclipse is a space dogfighting game that does actually look pretty cool. The rogue name in it might suggest that it's a roguelite of some kind. That's not particularly clear just yet. It's an arcade-style space flying sim thing. No release date, no demo, none of that kind of stuff yet, so not sure what's happening with that. Moonlighter 2. This was a new announcement, so following on from the original Moonlighter, which I think was like a... Was it not like a pixel art 2D game? I kind of had it in my mind that Moonlighter was a pixel art game, but maybe it's not. Anyway, Moonlighter 2 is kind of more of the same, but I think it's now got a co-op element to it. I think the second game did have co-op, but it was a later edition. I don't think it launched with it. And it's gonna have some roguelite elements. Did the original have roguelite elements? I'm not sure. I very, very briefly played it. Yeah, I wasn't as into the shop element of it as I thought I would be. I actually just kind of find that not all that interesting afterwards. The concept of it is interesting, but I don't know. It's the implementation I just wasn't a big fan of. Anyway, more Moonlighter if you're into that kind of thing. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tactical Takedown. That's a lot of T's. Anyway, so this is actually a tactics TMNT game, which is pretty interesting. And I do like the kind of like miniatures and like grid-based thing that they're going for here, because it's very tabletop combat stuff. So this is by the... what is their name? Something Scaffold. So the guys who made I Am Your Beast, the guys who made El Paso Elsewhere, and a few other games, they're making this. They have like some incredible range and variety in their game design skill set, because those are some very different games that they have here. Anyway, I don't think there's ever been a TMNT tactics game, so that will be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm actually quite looking forward to seeing how this one works out. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Anyway, Soulmates is kind of overcooked, but it's overcooked, but you're in space and you're trying to prevent your ship from exploding. So maybe it's like faster than it's kind of like FTL / Overcooked, I suppose, in some ways. You have these different stations, you're getting attacked by them, you need to like redirect energy to your shields, and somebody needs to man the turret and all this kind of stuff. So that's kind of what it's going for. I think it is going to have an early access release at some stage. Early access on Steam. Not specified when. Morta is kind of a bit Kingsfield. People who may not be familiar with Kingsfield, so Kingsfield is like, it was a kind of what it looks like here. It's a first-person medieval fantasy thing. It was a FromSoft developed game. It's kind of Demon Souls before Demon Souls in some ways. Very hard, very punishing, very clunky, very Demon Souls. Morta is, yeah, kind of like an indie version of that. There's another game that's very like this. Lunacid, I think. Similar kind of vibe that they're going for. Gold, Adventure Gold. If you think they might have a little bit too much of an interest in gold, you might be right. So Gold, Adventure Gold. I should have gone for full screen on Morta there. Anyway, the idea with Gold, Adventure Gold is you're building up this kind of village around a dungeon. You're managing, like trying to entice adventurers and give them quests and send them into the dungeon to get more gold so you can build a bigger village, kind of thing. There's also a bit of a black and white element to it, because you do have this kind of god creature that is protecting the village as well. And I think that, as you can see, there is a horror element to creatures in the dungeons that, you know, might come out to attack your village and that kind of thing. But yeah, you do have a god beast who I guess can attack the villagers as well. Hopefully they can, because that was one of the funnier parts of Black and White. Anyway, Cairn. Cairn we've seen a few times. It's a climbing sim type thing. Some extra things we've seen about Cairn now is that you can essentially just climb anything. There isn't like a specific path that you're taking up the mountain or up the cliff face or whatever. You can just go wherever you want, and figure it out how to get there. I think it was Blue Sky, but one of the social medias anyway, they were pointing out like there's no yellow paint in Cairn to tell you where to go. If we were to put yellow paint in Cairn, the whole mountain would be yellow. Like that's kind of what they're going for here. So yeah, if you want to try to take a faster route, you can, but it might be a little bit more difficult or a bit more strenuous on your resources or something like that. So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty interesting. I figured it would have been somewhat scripted in how you climbed up it, and it was just like a series of like kind of sort of puzzles instead, just to figure out how to get up there with the resources you had. But no, it's more a case of no, you can climb it however you want. Just make sure you have the resources to do it. So that's coming out at some stage next year, and there is a demo for it already available. It refuses to run on the Steam Deck, so make of that what you will. The Starlight Revolver is a little bit... it's a little bit Diablo, I guess. So, isometric action RPG, very colorful, very magical girl kind of anime thing. It is more of a co-op based thing, and I think it's a roguelite. If I wasn't in full screen, I'd be able to tell you that. It is a roguelike. Okay, so it's a roguelike action RPG from Riot Game people. You can probably tell from the aesthetics. Yeah, it's pretty interesting looking. It's very I do like that it's very colorful, and it is appreciated. A lot of games are very muted color palettes. I don't know about the roguelike part because I'm getting a little burnt out on roguelikes. But anyway, there's going to be an early access build in 2025. Revenge of the Savage Planet coming out in May of next year. So Journey to the Savage Planet was one of the very few Google Stadia exclusives. So it launched on Google Stadia. It was actually a first-party Google Stadia game, sorta, technically. I think the game had already been developed and then Google bought them. So it's sort of after the fact became a first-party game. Journey to the Savage Planet was a first-person Metroidvania slapstick comedy thing. Is hilarious. Was eventually ported to everything else. So it's not in the Google Stadia corpse. It did manage to survive it, along with Guilt. The game Guilt, not the emotional concept. Anyway, Journey to Savage Planet is very funny. Has some issues, but overall it was very enjoyable to play. Revenge of the Savage Planet is made in third person, as you can see. The first game is co-op as well, so the co-op element isn't necessarily new. The funny running animations and the kind of stop motion effects to it, that's kind of interesting, because obviously you wouldn't have seen that because it was a first person game. Or maybe you would see it as if there was a second person in the game with you. I don't know. I have no friends, so I have to play it solo. But yeah, it's very funny, and it is like a very anti-capitalism vibe to it, and even more so after the whole Stadia debacle. They've just gone even further in on that now for Revenge of the Savage Planet. Spacecraft is just a CG trailer, so I'm not gonna bother playing it, but it's an online space exploration adventure. What does that mean? Online space exploration adventure complete with base building. That's a lot. That's a lot to take on. Anyway, Keizukud has been out for a while. It's been in early access for a very, very long time, but is now 1.0. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the new releases section. Eve Frontier is a spin-off to Eve Online, the spreadsheet game. Eve Frontier won't be a spreadsheet game, or at least won't be as much of a spreadsheet game. It's more of like a survival thing rather than a sim. It is, however, blockchain stuff, so if that is an issue for you, and it is for me, make of that what you will, I guess. The Legend of Babu, which we did see a little bit of. I think it was the Xbox showcase. I'm not sure now, but yeah, it's the game with the dog in it. Like, it's got a bit of an adventure platforming thing going on. But hey, there's a dog and you ride it like a horse, so that's pretty good. I'm kind of here for that already. 2025, Tomb Water as a new announcement. So this is pixel art cowboy souls in a way, or at least that's how it's built. Whether that's how it'll actually play is debatable. But yeah, it's like Western. It's not isometric. I was gonna say it's isometric. It's not. It's more of a top-down thing. But yeah, Western-based top-down action RPG thing that has some eldritch horror things going on as well. Anyway, that's Tomb Water. Next year, some stage. Don't know when. Okay, so this was kind of a presentation from the PUBG guy, Brendan Green, and his new studio, or not his new studio, his Tencent funded studio, I suppose. So what have they been doing? Because they clearly haven't been working on PUBG. So this is their new project. It's a big survival, planet-wide survival type game. So it feels like they're going for Rust, really, but I don't know, with more like community-driven development stuff. So there's not a whole lot to this video. A lot of it is B-roll, really, and showing off their new system. There is a small playable kind of playtest thing going around called Prologue something, I forget the name of it. And then Prologue Go Back, I think, or Go Way Back or something like that is going to be a much bigger playtest at some stage later on. Sorry, it's not Prologue at all. It's Preface Undiscovered World is their kind of tech demo at the moment. And then Prologue Go Way Back will be a survival game that will be coming out early access next year at some stage. Abyssus is co-op, 4-player co-op shooter thing. Looks like it's running on the Warhammer Tide games, Vermintide, Dark Tide, that kind of thing. That seems to be the vibe I'm getting from this. Anyway, that's out some stage next year as well. Orcs Must Die. Death Trap is a roguelike version of Orcs Must Die, basically. I'm going to skip on. Mainframes, March of next year, March 6th. There is a demo available for it now. It's a pretty interesting looking platform game, puzzle platformer. So things kind of like Celeste, Super Meat Boy, V6, all of those kind of games. Maybe not as bad as V6. Story-wise, you're like this piece of outdated software trying to figure out what your purpose is in life now that you're, no longer required. Services are no longer required. Super Fantasy Kingdom. I'll be honest, I don't actually remember what that game is, so I'm just gonna move on. Mecha Blood. It's kind of a boomer shooter, but you're playing from the cockpit of a mech. Which is obviously going to make the screen very small, so I'm not sure how I feel about this, because the concept I like. I feel like this as a VR title would have made more sense. But anyway, it's a boomer shooter, but you're inside a mech. That's kind of the gist of it. You have some of the hairiest arms I think I've ever seen. Are we sure we're not some sort of monkey hybrid thing? Anyway, Mecha Blood next year, some stage, January next year. Speaking of VR, Isla is I was gonna say first person, but fucking everything in VR, almost everything in VR is first person. Horror type thing. So the idea is you are testing some sort of software. You're a QA person. The QA is kind of farmed out to people work from home because they have that headset. And hey, maybe the software is not great, and maybe some things are going wrong, and maybe it's entering the real world now, and maybe you're in trouble. kind of the deal with it. Next year, some stage. There's a couple of early access games are getting some new seasons or new updates, whatever way you want to put it. So Abiotic Factor, I think it's like an underground twin stick shooter. Is that what Abiotic Factor is? No, it's first person. I don't know what Abiotic Factor is. Alright, anyway, that's getting a Dark Energy update. The Outlast Trials also getting an update. Robots at Midnight is what's coming out at the end of January. Robots at Midnight is kind of like the Goonies Westworld in a way. It's like the robots take over this kind of resort village town, and you and a bunch of other kids are kind of gonna have to, you know, stop them nasty old robots. It's kind of the deal with it. I don't think we know too much more about it, whether it's an open world thing, whether it's a level-based thing, is it a roguelike somehow also? Any of that kind of thing. Action RPG is all they're going with. Deepest Fear has a pretty good tagline. Metroidvania immersive sim horror. Like, fucking sign me up. You've hit all the buzzwords I like. So, underwater shenanigans, things go wrong, etc. It does have a bit of the first-person survival horror element to it. The Metroidvania, it's kind of funny calling a survival horror a Metroidvania, because they kind of are. Anyway, like, you'll encounter, I can't get through this door yet because I haven't found the thing. And in a Metroidvania, it's because I haven't found the power-up that lets me do this. But in a survival horror, it's just I haven't found the key. It's still kind of the same idea. Anyway, it's Deepest Fear. We'll see how that works out for them. No release date yet. Wizard of Legend, again, is another game in early access that's getting an update. Tears of Metal we've seen before. It's kind of Dynasty Warriors, but it's in Scotland. Kinda. That's kind of its deal. Next year, some stage. Yeah, it's just you versus a lot of enemies, kind of thing, and believe it's a roguelike of some kind as well. Ready or Not, getting more DLC. Ready or Not's kind of like a SWAT simulator type thing. Enter the Chronosphere has a kind of interesting premise. It's kind of doing the super hot thing where time only moves where you move, but done from like an isometric kind of tactics thing. So time will move when you move, and when you do your actions or whatever, bullets will start moving again. You're trying to sort of time your abilities to weave in between bullets. It's got like a bit of a bullet hell turn-based tactics thing. It's kind of what it's going about. It's going to break brains, I think. I would actually really like to see the code of the game, because I'd be curious how it works. Anyway, there'll be an open beta on Steam. Sorry, there is an open beta on Steam right now if you want to check that out. Dark Water is just Lethal Company, but it's underwater, so I'm gonna move on. Blueprints had a demo for Steam Next Fest. I'm not sure if it's still available, but the idea with Blueprints is you have inherited this mansion from a family member, and you kind of have this task of having to find the 53rd room or the 55th room or something like that. There's some room on the plans that doesn't exist, but they've told you that it does exist, so it's up to you to find it. And the way Blueprints works is you are kind of randomly generating rooms, and then trying to get as deep into the mansion as you can. And I guess presumably the very last room is the 53rd, 55th room kind of thing. But it's trying to map out a route that doesn't give you dead ends or use up your resources and you have to start over and that kind of thing. So that's kind of the vibe of Blueprints. Eric Shome, The Stolen Dream is isometric real-time stealth game. So is it Desperados that has that? trying to remember the name of the developer. But that also has a kind of isometric, immersive sim kind of thing to it. Weird West, I think, does it as well. But I think Eric's Home is very much a stealth game, whereas Weird West is more of a kind of immersive sim thing going for it. Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Plague Tale, but it's like a Plague Tale, but from where the camera is way out here instead, I guess. Anyway, next year, some stage, who knows when. Can you stop trying to get me to play these videos? That would be great. Sorry. Chains of Freedom, I think it's another tactics stealth game. Again, a bit of Commandos, I think, is what it's going for. I'm trying to get just actual gameplay. Yeah, I think there's like multiple factions or something at play though. Anyway, I think that's what they're going for. It kind of had a weird sort of like grim Starship Troopers vibe to it, and like the guys you're fighting for are not necessarily the good guys kind of thing, but also the monsters are really trying to kill everybody. So it's, I don't know, it's got a weird vibe to it. Tempest Rising is like a throwback to the old Command & Conquers, so like the 90s, early 2000s Command & Conquer games. April, some stage. End of January, Eternal Strands was a game by Mike Laidlaw, or is a game by Mike Laidlaw, former Dragon Age, former BioWare guy, went off to do his own thing after Dragon Age Inquisition. So we've seen this a few times. It's got a bit of an open world thing. There's a little bit of Shadow of the Colossus going on, but it is for the most part an action RPG. There are some interesting kind of synergies with your abilities. You've got like a telekinesis thing, and then you've got a freezing thing, and your character can like glide and double jump and stuff like that. So there are some interesting kind of combos that are not really showing off in the trailer. Most of this trailer is just kind of highlighting the little bit of the story and some of the voice casts. So the narrator from Baldur's Gate 3 is the main villain by the sounds of it. And if that's not them, I'm very surprised. Vice Undercover is an interesting one. It's kind of... So the kind of deal with it is, what if the internet existed in the 80s? Even though it did, sort of, but whatever. So it's like drug running, but they're using, the internet to do it kind of thing. And you have managed to infiltrate the cartel, and you have 1 hour every day where you are able to access their systems. And I think it's taking... The whole game is... The gameplay element of it is like first person in a computer screen and the PC screen, and just trying to connect the dots with a lot of people. I have a feeling a lot of these images are AI, so make of that what you will. Can't say I'm a big fan of it, but I don't know. The concept is interesting, but if you can confirm that those aren't AI images, I guess I'd be more interested in playing it, but if it is AI, I'm gonna have to say no. Alara Prime is a tactical 4v4v4 shooter. It's Valorant. It's just Valorant. Anyway, moving on. It's Valorant, but your abilities are a bit more about subterfuge and stealth and backstabbing people and tricking them and stuff like that, as opposed to, I'm gonna throw a big bomb now. It's a little bit different. Age of Darkness is it's like an RTS, dark fantasy RTS thing. Have been in early access for a while, and it's making its version 1.0 soon. The Altars, we've seen a couple of times now. The Altars is kind of... I was going to spoil a film for some people, so I won't do that. The Altars is, you are this guy who's marooned on a alien planet. Nobody else around. You were supposed to be part of this big science expedition, All the other scientists have died. You're the only one who survived. But hey, you've got this cloning machine. So I can clone myself, and hopefully one of those will somehow randomly have the skills I need. And wouldn't you know it, they do somehow randomly have. I don't know how they pick that, but somehow they randomly have the skills you need. So it's a bit of a base management lifestyle sim thing. But all of the characters are the same person with slightly different personalities. Or sometimes drastically different personalities, and then trying to get them all to kind of work together, and maybe at some point you forget which one of you is the clone. I don't know. Aquametsis, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. It's calling itself an immersive sim sabotage tactical thing. I didn't really see the immersive sim elements to it. I played the video. Anyway, this does look like it's a competitive multiplayer thing. I don't think it's a single player game. But I think the idea is that you're not necessarily going to be running around just shooting people. You're going to be like trying to get them to walk into traps. Never mind, you have a gun. Never mind. No, maybe it is a single player game. I don't know. I kind of got the idea that it was a multiplayer thing, mostly because the environment never fucking changed. It seems like you're in this warehouse for the whole thing. Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Moving on. Descenders next is the sequel to Descenders. Descenders is essentially SSX, more or less. I'm sure there's more to it than that, but that's what I got from it. Anyway, early access some stage next year. Let's Build a Dungeon has a lot of dungeon gold to it, and it's kind of the same thing, but slightly different for Let's Build a Dungeon is that you're building a MMO instead. So it is taken from the viewpoint that you are actually a game developer developing an MMO, and kind of leading a development team and so on and so forth. Whereas Gold Dungeon Gold, I think it's just you're like the town developer or whatever. It's not like you're in the world, as opposed to Let's Build a Dungeon is a game dev simulator instead. But yeah, it looks interesting. Wild Tactics is furry XCOM. Let's go with that. Steel Seed is... I'm going to skip to a few of these now because it's getting a little bit long. Steel Seed is third-person stealth action. Actually, it's kind of funny because they call it a stealth action game, and there's a fairly substantial amount of the gameplay. It was very much not stealth. Having said that, now I can't find the parts that I'm talking. Yeah, that's combat. Well, maybe it's a stealth takedown. Okay, stealth takedown, fine. Look, there are parts where they're just outright fighting people. There, see? Look, that's not stealth. Where's the stealth? Anyway, the small bit that I was able to get running on the Steam Deck, because the Steam Deck really didn't want to play this at all. I know I say that a lot about the Steam Deck. It does play most games. It just struggles with some of them, and it struggled with this one. I found it a bit clunky, but again, that could entirely just be because, one, it wasn't optimized at the time. It was an XFest demo, which are, not optimized, not final code, etc. And also, the Steam Deck's not exactly a graphical powerhouse, so it's somewhat expected. Anyway, Island of Winds, I don't remember. And I know I said I don't remember about the other Super Mega, whatever the fuck it was, but it had a terrible name and I didn't want to look at it. At least this has an interesting name. This feels like Myst? Or Riven? I don't know, okay. It's got a bit of stealthy gameplay to it as well. Yeah, I'm not surprised I don't remember this, because I kind of have no idea what the game is about. Anyway, sometime next year we'll find out, I guess. Sonokuni is kind of a rhythm... It's kind of like a music rhythm action Hotline Miami in some ways. Sometime next year. Copa City, or Capacity spelled wrong. So think a football game, but then the boring version of the football game, which is where you're managing the team. and then an even more boring version of that, where you are managing the event around the football team. The event the football team is going to. So it's kind of a city management, event management thing, as if the World Cup was being played there in your city. So you're trying to manage all of the stuff around that, public transport, having to cut off streets, that kind of thing. That's what Copa City is. But the idea is like there's a big football tournament going to be played there. City Tales Medieval Era is a pretty fucking generic name. Anyway, it's a city builder thing, early access 2025. Hell Clock is a funnier name. It's still a bit generic, but whatever. It's a Diablo thing. Actually, this was kind of interesting because they're taking... This is allegedly based on 1980s Brazil. Now, I mean, 1896. Never mind. 1800s, not the 80s. That's slightly more believable. Okay. Even so, I still don't think they had this kind of shit. Now, I didn't live in Brazil in 1896, but I'm gonna imagine there wasn't like magical demon beasts and what have you. Anyway, in some way, I think it ties into 1800s, 1890s Brazilian history in some way, but how exactly? A dark fantasy stroll through 80s Brazilian history. Yeah, 1800s Brazilian history, not 1980s. That's what threw me off. All right. Drivers of the Apocalypse is that scene in Mad Max Fury Road where all of the cars are driving and it's like a big car fight kind of thing. Okay, that, but a video game. That's that. The Finals has a new season. It's first, it's a free to play first person shooter thing. Merchants of Rosewall is kind of Moonlighter again, but without the dungeon crawling element, so it's just running the shop. Imperial, how it's pronounced exactly. It's kind of like a sci-fi, it's kind of like science. How to put it? Sci-fi fantasy, sci-fi, but also medieval fantasy. Melee action game. Destiny, but with melee focused third person. Yeah, okay, fine. That's close enough. Sometime in 2025. Legends of Awen, Rise of the Fianna is not a great name either, but I'm gonna give it a little bit of credit because Fianna is Irish. The Fianna are like in Irish folklore. The Fianna are like the elite warriors of Ireland, of the island. Anyway, so it's going to be a CRPG take with Celtic folklore elements to it. We'll be seeking crowdfunding in 2025. Total Chaos was a Doom mod once upon a time, but is now its own thing. So it's a first-person kind of survival horror thing. It does look pretty cool, but I've been steered wrong on games that look pretty cool and turn out to be kind of shit before, so we'll see how that works out for them. And then finally, that was a lot of games. Finally, we have Spine. Spine you may have seen on various social media things because there are a few GIFs and videos of it going around. But it's kind of, if you've ever seen the film Equilibrium, whatever, with Christian Bale, where they have gun fu, which is like in universe, it's a martial art designed with guns to maximize your ability to shoot people with guns. The film is very silly. Anyway, it's not supposed to be silly, but it is very silly. Anyway, that's kind of Spine. That's the gist of Spine. Anyway, so that was the PC Gamer's Most Wanted showcase that also had way more than the Most Wanted things. Anyway, elsewhere. No, that's all the updates. I don't have time for any other ones. Right. It being middle-ish of the month, Game Pass for December. It's pretty decent if you have Game Pass Ultimate. If you don't have Game Pass Ultimate, it's okay, but it's not amazing. So, Game Pass Ultimate or PC Game Pass Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, you would have access to that. Kind of interestingly, you only have access to the early access. So, okay, technically, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle isn't out yet. because you have to buy or pay for early access to get it on the Friday instead of being able to get it next week. But I don't view it that way. I view it as the game is out, and you're just being shitheads about the release date. That's how I view it. Stop making me pay almost the same price as the game to fucking play it a couple of days early, especially a single player game. Anyway, if you have PC Game Pass, though, you do have to wait for whatever reason. But if you have Ultimate, you can play it on the extra early access days. We'll talk about it in the new release section. World Rally Championship. It's a rally racing game. Overthrown as part of a game preview, early access, what have you. Overthrown we had a look at last week. So it is kind of a lifestyle sim, village management thing. But the idea is your character's like some kind of super powered king, queen, regent. So if you want to, if you want to reposition the town mill or something, you pick it up and throw it to where you want it to go. When you're harvesting things, you like super speed through it and collect them all and put them over your head and throw it away. Anyway, Wild Frost is, from what I've heard, a pretty good deck builder game. I'm not really into deck builders myself, but from what I've heard, Wild Frost is a good one. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. Again, since Microsoft bought Activision, more Activision games are making their way onto Game Pass, so there you go. It's Mario Kart, but Crash. And I know fans of Crash Team Racing would say sacrilege, but whatever. It's close enough. Carrion is a kind of interesting... the idea with Carrion is you are playing the role of a escaped, like, mutagenic bioweapon type thing, making your way through the laboratory where you were created and killing everybody and absorbing their biomass kind of thing. So you're the villain in Carrion. It's pretty good. Road 96 is a kind of interesting... it's kind of like a randomly generated, or like a road... You could say like a roguelike kind of thing, but not really. You're making a road trip along Road 96, and the events that happen on the road are somewhat random, and every journey is supposed to be different because different events take place, kind of thing. Forza is, Forza Motorsport. It's the more the one that kind of takes place on racing tracks instead of the Forza Horizon ones, which take place in like an open map kind of thing. Haunty is a kind of interesting. It's sort of a twin stick shooter, but not really. Kind of like its interactive mechanic is twin stick shooting. You move with the left stick, you shoot with the right stick. But shooting things, it just helps you possess objects. The objects you shoot are what you possess, and then you can make them do different things. So it's a little bit twin stick shooter, but then it's also a little bit Super Mario Odyssey in that the things you take over have their own abilities. It's an interesting game. I think we played a little bit of it on the channel. Humanity is Lemmings, essentially. It's Lemmings, but you're a dog. You play a Shiba Inu in it. Anyway, those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something now? Well, we have a lot of games came out this week. Some of them want to claim that they're not coming out until next week, but no, they came out this week. Anyway, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, from Machine... Is it Machine Head or just Machine Games? Don't remember. The guys behind the Wolfenstein games, anyway. The newer Wolfenstein games, obviously, not the old ones. From what I've seen from reviews, it's being pretty well received. It is a little buggy at the moment. It's just Machine Games, okay. With the AI, the enemy's AI in particular is pretty bad. You might be able to push past it because it is a pretty good recreation of Indiana Jones from what I've heard from reviews and the small bits of gameplay I've seen. It's a pretty good Indiana Jones simulator. One review I did see, though, the tagline was "Great movie, good game." So it might be the case that the cutscenes are better than the actual gameplay. I don't know if that's what they were going for. But yeah, There's a little bit more to it. I was expecting that it was going to be a kind of level-based thing, but there are like some open maps. Like the small bits that I have seen, there's a bit where you're walking around in the Vatican pretty early in the game, and there's a lot of different places you can go to that don't really have anything to do with the overall plot, but they might give you like clues and stuff along the way. So I thought that's pretty interesting. There are also some parts of like the Vatican area where it's like, no, you come back here after you've played a bit more of the game. So there are some Metroidvania type things going on there as well. Anyway, that's Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It is exclusive to Xbox and PC right now, but it will make its way to PlayStation at some point. We don't know when, but at some point. We have Marvel Rivals. So Marvel Rivals is Overwatch, but Marvel. That's kind of the gist of it. I believe it's free to play as well. And the 1.0 release of it did add a bunch of characters. Wolverine, Cloak and Dagger. I think Psylocke was new as well. I don't think Moon Knight was there in the beta either, so he must be new. Don't know if Doctor Doom is actually playable. I'm also noticing there's not a whole lot of actual gameplay in this trailer. There's in fact zero gameplay in this trailer. Anyway, just take my word for it. It's Overwatch, but Marvel. Anyway, moving on. Infinity Nikki, I've been talking about a couple of times. It's a free-to-play Gashapon thing, so again, do think Genshin Impact. There's going to be like random loot box type things going on in the game, so do keep that in mind if you have an interest in playing it. The gist of Infinity Nikki is that it's a dress-up game. It's a bit of a lifestyle sim as well, with some sort of platforming elements. So if you want to take the kind of bits of Genshin Impact that are mostly platforming and puzzles and that kind of element to it, it's like take Genshin Impact but take away the combat, and that's kind of Infinity Nikki. There's a little bit of, I would say there's a little bit of Mario Odyssey to it. Or not just Super Mario Odyssey, but some of the newer Super Mario games where the map is quite large and there are a lot of like stars. They're not stars in this game, but think of it as that, stars or moons or whatever, and there are different ways to acquire them. And they require different costumes, and all the costumes have different abilities kind of thing. You'll have to do some kind of platforming, puzzling, and platform skills and that kind of thing to get to them. But anyway, that's Infinity Nikki. We have a little bit more to talk about that later on, so we'll come back to it later. Skydance's Behemoth. This is a VR title from the pretty good VR guys who made the Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners VR games that are pretty good. Skydance Games is it's the Tom Cruise guy. Skydance is Tom Cruise's thing, so that's why it's Skydance's Behemoth. I don't know why they had to put the name of the studio at the top. Like, you would think more games would do that, but not many games do. You don't really hear that too often. Maybe they should do it more often. Anyway, yeah, it looks pretty good, and some of the streamers I've seen playing it, it's gonna be clunky because first person climbing and platforming is kind of weird. Anyway, because obviously you're not going anywhere, so you're gonna have that weird feeling that I'm climbing, but I'm not actually climbing, and my brain is broken. So you're gonna have that weird horribleness to it. But yeah, it seems like it's a lot of fun to play, so I'm quite looking forward to giving that a shot. I still have to figure out what a VR setup for the channel looks like, because I haven't been happy with our previous ones. Mythwrecked Ambrosia Island is Stardew Valley. I'm gonna keep saying these for these kind of things. Again, you are shipwrecked, mythwrecked, on this island, and the island is home to the Greek gods for some reason, who have forgotten who they are. They've forgotten that they're the Greek gods. They've forgotten what their purpose is in life, and so on and so forth. And it's your job to sort of remind them of who they are and help them, figure out what it is they're supposed to be doing with themselves and go back to the world and help it out and what have you. Um, so there's a small bit of that, and then there's a small bit of like collectathon kind of things. Um, yeah, it's kind of like it's not exactly a dating sim, but it does kind of have that feeling to it. Anyway, that's Mythwrecked. Uncle Chop's Rocket Shop. How to explain Uncle Chop's Rocket Shop? So the idea with this is you are at a chop shop. Essentially, you are working on rockets for people who come in here, aliens and humans alike, and they need their rockets worked on and fixed. You take on, you do a shift. You have to try to work on as many rockets as you can. There is a bit of a rogue-like element to it. As you can see, you need to pay your rent in 2 days there on the top right. So you need to do enough work to make up enough money to pay your rent, and basically it just keeps going like that until you eventually don't do enough. You eventually don't have enough work, and then you have to start over and that kind of thing. Anyway, it's pretty silly. It's a pretty silly game. Archons, we did play as part of the most recent Steam Next Fest. So Archons from the outset looks like Vampire Survivors. It is that kind of horde mode kind of thing. But the gimmick, if you like, for Archons is that you're playing 2 characters at once. So one character is on the left analog stick, one character is on the right analog stick. You activate their abilities with the right shoulder buttons for the right hand character, the left shoulder buttons for the left hand character, and so on and so forth. But it is still Vampire Survivor in that way. You will be fighting a lot of the way to put it. You'd be fighting hordes of enemies. You're not going to be fighting so many enemies as you do in Vampire Survivors, because most of the difficulty is going to be controlling 2 characters at once. I'm playing the demo. It's hard. It is hard to keep track of both of your characters when so much is going on screen at once. I do say so the Vampire Survivors element is mostly that a lot of your abilities just work by themselves. You don't have to do anything. Same with Vampire Survivors. A lot of your attacks and stuff, you don't activate them. They just happen. There are a couple of abilities in this where you do activate them, but for the most part, it's passive. Anyway, Archons. So Caves of Cud, again, it was part of the PC Gamer showcase thing. So Caves of Cud has been in development for a very long time. It is a enormous fantasy sim game. Does it look super pretty? No, but let's just say when it came out originally, it looked even worse than this. But anyway, it's extremely versatile. The amount of just anything that you can do in Caves of Cud. It is a fantasy RPG. That is what it's going for. It's hard to just explain just how much you can do in the game. There's so many. Think of Dwarf Fortress and how deep that simulation is. Now, Caves of Cud doesn't quite go that deep, but it's pretty deep. The simulation is pretty nuts. Yeah. Just try it. I think there's a demo for it. Just give it a shot. Anyway, moving on. A couple of ports now. So Fantasia Neo Dimension is technically a port, I suppose, because it was a mobile-only game for a long time. So this is developed by Mistwalker. Mistwalker is Hironobu Sakaguchi's studio. So that's Final Fantasy. The guy who made the original Final Fantasy. That's his deal. So yeah, I've been dying to play this, but it had been marooned in the Apple Arcade forever, and it feels like forever. It's only been a year, maybe a little bit more. But a traditional Final Fantasy kind of thing. I've been really interested to play it. Gameplay wise, it is a turn-based JRPG kind of thing. It being a mobile game at when it was initially envisioned and designed as such, you could essentially collect fights. So the normal way in older JRPGs where you would have a random fight, a random encounter. You're just running along the map and the screen fades off and does a big swirl or something, and now you're into combat. So it does have that, but you can elect to postpone the fight and just collect fights. So every time you hit a random thing, go, hey, do you want to do the fight? No. Store it. So by the time you get to... I'm not sure if there's ever a cap or anything like that. But the idea, I think, was... I don't have time to do this fight right now. I'm on my commute or whatever, and I just want to get from point A to point B. So I'm just going to collect all the fights. And then when I get home, or when it's my lunch break, or whatever it is, I'll do all the fights then instead. And if you have collected enough fights, they start to get very difficult. You know, if you collect only 1 or 2 fights, they're fine. But if you start getting like 3, 4, or 5, they compound on each other. And not only is it a kind of war of attrition because you're not able to heal in between and that kind of thing, there's a multiplier for however many fights you've stored that enemies get bonuses and stuff like that. So that's pretty interesting. And then the other thing that is really cool about Fantasian and wasn't really marketed, or at least I don't think people were very much aware of it, but the environments are real dioramas. So these are photogrammatic miniature models that they've put into the game. Now the characters and the special effects and stuff like that aren't, but the actual background model is real. Like it's real, like card and clay and modeling and stuff like that, and they look amazing. I'm trying to remember the game now. Is it Kunitsugami? Path of the Goddess? Something like that? The Capcom game where you're protecting the goddess and she's walking along the path kind of thing. That also did that. They also have photogrammatic models, dioramas that they filmed and put them into the game. And again, those environments look really highly detailed. It's very, very pretty. Anyway, that's... I don't think a lot of people know that they were real models. That's the case. Anyway, moving on. More ports. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, we played on the channel this year at some point. I don't remember when. Time is a Construct. It was very good. It was a very good puzzle game. It sort of had like the Resident Evil survival horror element to it, except without the horror or the survival bit. It's just, here's a mansion. It's very mysterious. Practically everything is a puzzle to get anywhere, and the puzzles were like really tough. Some of them were very difficult, and some of them were like kicking myself that I didn't realize that that's what the answer was. Some of them I made more difficult than they really were. I get this trailer doesn't show any gameplay whatsoever, but whatever. Go watch my... Well, actually don't. Okay. Put my playthrough on, but don't watch it. Because you'll get all the solutions to the game. But, give me the views or whatever. Anyway, it was very good. And I think it's up for Game of the Year. I think it's in Game of the Year for Game Awards. Or if it's not, it's in Best Indie Game, definitely. It was very, very good. Anyway, moving on. It's now available on consoles. That's what the port was. There's a console release now. Also console release. The Thaumaturge, however you pronounce it. Thaumaturge is a CRPG thing. You are playing Victor something or Victor something. This is set in Poland around the time of the Polish Revolution. They left Russia essentially. I think, I don't know. Don't quote me on that. Check Wikipedia for something, or I don't know. Anyway, it's a turn-based combat element to it, and then it also has a sort of detective game on the outside. The story-wise, you are returning to Warsaw after having been away for a very long time. Your father has died. You've come back to bury him, essentially. But hey, maybe he didn't die of natural causes. Maybe some shenanigans have been happening. And you, as a thaumaturge, can access people's emotions. Kind of learn the truth a little bit buried deeper than people might want you to know. But on top of doing that, mingling with these demons and whatever that help you, uncover people's issues, also kind of warps your personality somewhat. It gives you flaws and that kind of thing, and that will affect how you talk to people and the dialogue options available to you and that kind of thing. It's pretty cool. The small amount of the trailer I played, that's Rasputin. He's in the game for reasons. Anyway, last one, not a port, a remaster of The Thing. So The Thing is, or was, a PS2 Xbox generation game. It is a sequel-ish to the film, The Thing. Spoilers for a film from the 90s, but I know people think it's from the 80s. It's actually from the 90s. Anyway, there's a bit at the end of The Thing where you're not sure if they've killed the thing or not, and if it has maybe it has escaped. You're not certain. It's left deliberately ambiguous. But the game takes the premise that they didn't kill it, and it has infected a different outpost now. So if you don't, if you somehow don't know what the thing is, do you know the game Among Us? Okay, now you know what the thing is. There is a thing, some sort of alien thing on board that can mimic people. So it kills them, doesn't take over their body, just shapeshifts itself so that it looks like them, and then uses the familiarity of people and a drop in their guard and whatever, and then kills them and absorbs their biomass and so on and so forth. That mechanic is at play in the game as well, where you aren't necessarily, like, at any time, anyone other than your character could be the thing, and you don't know. And it's not necessarily, sometimes it is scripted who is and who isn't, but not always. So there is like a small element of whether or not you should trust this person or turn your back on them, or are they going to kill somebody while you're away, like that kind of thing. And then there's the kind of dumb video game things of doing a turret fight with a giant version of the thing, like, Anyway, it was good. It was a good game. Unfortunately, though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So we had a lot of new releases this week. Unfortunately, we also had a lot of layoffs this week. So a bunch of games that have lost developers. Some studios have entirely shut down. Some studios will probably be shut down, but anyway, we're going to go through them. So Ilphonic, they're the people behind the Friday the 13th game. They're the people behind the Predator Hunting Grounds game. They're the people behind Killer Clowns from Outer Space is their most recent one. I think they are the Texas Chainsaw Massacre guys as well, but I'm not sure on that one. Anyway, they have announced an unspecified number of layoffs as it realigns to a refined strategy, whatever that means. Anyway, CEO and co-founder confirmed. Today, we had to accept the harsh reality that the state of the industry has impacted us here at Ilphonic. It is with the heaviest of hearts that cuts to our teams had to be made today as we realigned to a refined strategy. There's a lot of talent in the group, and if you or your team are hiring, should be hiring. Anyway, please reach out so people can be connected to open roles. Please take this team members that we have failed. Anyway, we don't necessarily know the specific reasons of what's going on with Ilphonic. If it really is industry, fucking the state of the industry that everyone is using as an excuse, or if that is a legitimate reason for them. One thing that does have to be pointed out for Ilphonic is they have a lot of licensed things. Friday the 13th is a licensed product. Predator is a licensed product. As fucking obscure as it might sound, Killer Clowns from Outer Space is a licensed product. And if they are the Texas Chainsaw Massacre guys, again, licensed things. Licenses are expensive. And not only that, the legal shenanigans around them can be very difficult. Particularly with Friday the 13th, because the person or peoples or whatever who actually own the Friday the 13th license isn't clear. It's still up for like legal dispute on who actually owns the rights to Friday the 13th. Predator Hunting Grounds was developed and then taken down and then put up again only recently. So there's obviously been some licensing issues going on there. Killer Clowns from Outer Space was a very strange license to get in the first place, but they went for it. It wouldn't have been free. They would have had to pay for it, so who knows? But anyway, they specialize in these kind of asymmetrical type games. So Dead by Daylight, that, but doing it with Friday the 13th, or doing it with The Predator, or doing it with the Killer Clowns, or doing it with Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, that's kind of what IllFonic do, and it's pretty clear that the people who do like those kind of games are like, yeah, but Dead by Daylight though. Like, that does seem to be the one they're going for, rather than going for just specific licenses. They go for the one that has a bunch of different characters in it, and I get why people would do that, because obviously it's cheaper, and Dead by Daylight seems to be a little bit better supported. IllFonic, for all of their kind of interesting games, their games weren't exactly stable. What was I trying to say? I think it does the license a disservice when you're just a costume, you know, or you're just a character pack in a game. Like, they're doing it in Mortal Kombat as well, where they're just shoehorning in horror creatures to play as instead of just making their own game. And I think it would do the license a better service for them to make their own game, but people who own these kind of IPs don't understand video games, really. As you'll see. Like, just what Warner Brothers is doing with Batman. Like, you had Batman Arkham, and then you fucked it up. I don't know how you managed that. We'll see what happens with Spider-Man. At least seems to be doing alright. But for, like, these ones, there hasn't been a decent licensed horror game in fucking ages. Arguably ever, depending on how, you know, how much you liked the old Splatterhouse games. I just think it would do them they're doing it a disservice in the Dead by Daylight approach by just having them as DLC, or having them as just character packs and stuff like Mortal Kombat. I kind of have the same feeling for stuff like Castlevania, where Konami is kind of just putting them in as DLC. As much as it's appreciated that there's like a Dead Cells Castlevania and there's a Vampire Survivors Castlevania type of thing. Kind of just want Castlevania the game, you know? Anyway, moving on, because that's not the only layoffs happening. Chivalry developer Torn Banner Studios also laying off staff, and this is just after they released a game, which is pretty shitty. Anyway, Toronto-based Torn Banner Studios has laid off an unknown number of staff. Statement by the CEO and creative director was shared via LinkedIn. Gross. Couldn't have put it up on even on your own website. Like, no? Okay. That they are restructuring the studio. Again, we're using that word because everyone's using that word. It's a convenient excuse for them to say it. Anyway, all affected employees will be receiving severance packages and are going to be allowed to keep their work computers, because it would probably cost them more to have to mail them back to the studio and what have you, so just fucking keep it. Anyway, they added that the company is working hard to help people find positions at other studios where we can. Are they actually doing that? We don't know. Debatable. Anyway, this follows the early access launch of the studio's latest game, No More Room in Hell 2, which is like a zombie shooter survival thing. Despite these cuts, the studio is fully committed as we move forward with a full 1.0 release in 2025. I'm not sure if you're fully committed if you're also working hard to help people. No? Aren't you doing that too? Then you can't be fully committed then, right? Anyway, Chivalry 2 also won't be affected by the cuts. Kind of feel like it will be. And the servers will continue to operate. Torn Banner Studios would not be the place it is today without the dedication, passion, and accomplishments of these great people. So it follows that Torn Banner Studios won't be Torn Banner Studios anymore because those people aren't there. That's the follow-on from that sentence. Anyway, we're saddened to part ways with some of our incredible team and sincerely wish them the best. Before Christmas, after they finished working on the game. It's pretty shit. Pretty shit. Again, it might entirely be state of the industry means that they're not getting the money and they can't afford the overhead. And like, it could be legitimate. It could also be just cover for cutting costs. Anyway, Deceive Inc. developer Sweet Bandits shuts down after reaching breaking point. So Deceive Inc. is a competitive multiplayer shooter live service thing. But the game, from the title of the game, there is an element of like subterfuge and backstabbing and trickery and kind of prop hunt almost to the game. Anyway, it has reached its breaking point. There's no easy way to say this. The Sweet Bandits team is no more. After a long and difficult road of trying to get Deceive Inc. in a state where it could thrive, we have reached the breaking point for the studio, unable to continue this adventure with you. While this is a moment of great sadness for us, we are happy to have been given the chance to create this universe and share it with you all. We are amazed by the passion of this community, and this has been a driving force for us all along, pushing us to try and make this project reach the potential it has. We put our heart and soul into this game, and nothing makes us happier than seeing it resonate with other people across the world. So, at least with this one, I think this is I don't think there's any element of like cost cutting, shitty capitalism stuff going on. I do think that they made a game that they were proud of. It was the game they wanted to make, but it just didn't capture enough people to continue covering costs and what have you. So, according to the website, they have 18 employees. I'd imagine there is some element of outsourcing going on as well. Because I just don't think they're making a game like this with 18 people. I don't buy it, but could be wrong. I don't know. You see some pretty crazy indie games that are made by one person, which is insane. Anyway, Deceive Inc. launched back in March of last year. It's currently sitting on a very positive rating on Steam with about 4,500 user reviews. Pretty good. It's pretty, like, with that many reviews and still maintaining a very positive rating, like, that's pretty good. So clearly people who did play it were happy with it. However, it did only have 200 concurrent players over the past 6 months, so for a live service game, that's pretty low. That's not really sustainable. We are considering options with the goal of maintaining the game that we all love. We will share news with everyone once we have more details. In the meantime, servers and game access will continue as they have been. So look for a way to keep it going. It might be a case of going with with players hosting the server themselves, instead of having the servers hosted on a third party, which has its benefits but also has its drawbacks. But anyway, we'll see what they go with. X-Defiant, Cross-Defiant, however it's pronounced, becomes the latest live service thing to bite the bullet. Ubisoft set to shutter studio and lay off almost 300 people. Cool! Ubisoft's free-to-play first-person shooter. So X-Defiant, Cross-Defiant is Black Ops, the multiplayer version, I suppose. Let's pull the plug. We've made the difficult decision to discontinue development. Up to 277 staff are set to be laid off. This will be affecting their San Francisco and Osaka studios, as well as the Sydney studio to some extent. So, Chief Studio and Portfolio Officer. Despite an encouraging start, the team's passionate work and a committed fan base, we've not been able to attract and retain enough players in the long run to compete at the level we aim for. What level are you aiming for? Would be a question here, but okay. In the very demanding free-to-play first-person shooter market. Well, I mean, if you knew it was gonna be that demanding, and everyone knew it was that demanding, could have told you that 5 years ago. Anyway, as a result, the game is too far away from reaching the results required to enable further significant investment. We are announcing that we will be sunsetting it. Too far away. How far? How far is too far? Is it not going to make its return on its investment within the day it's launched? That's too far. Anyway. Then Mark Rubin, who's the executive producer. For those who purchased the Ultimate Founders Pack, you get a full refund. If you bought anything within the last 30 days, that will also be refunded. You should get those refunds in about 8 weeks. 8 weeks? Jesus. Anyway, at least you're getting some of your money back. Almost half of the Cross-Defiant team worldwide will be transitioning to other roles. So that's almost 150 in San Francisco, slightly less in Osaka and Sydney. So that's where the 277 is coming from. Yeah, so this, like, it's not obviously not great news because people are losing their job and you're probably losing a game that like a significant number of people would have enjoyed playing, would also have been like funding people's lives in some ways, the developers and so on. But kind of annoyingly, executive producer Ruben was denying that the game was going to be shut down just in October, not even that long ago. So that's pretty shitty because this decision would have been made a while ago, probably in October. Anyway, many free-to-play games take a long time to find their footing and become profitable. You know that. You know that, and yet it's too far away. Anyway, it's a long journey that Ubisoft and the teams working on the game were prepared to make. Were they? The too far away statement suggests you weren't, or at least Ubisoft wasn't, until recently, so they weren't prepared to make it. Anyway, unfortunately, the journey became too much to sensibly continue. For who? For who? Who did it become too much for? Anyway, speaking of live services being shuttered, Foam Stars also probably on its way out. Foam Stars final season update. So Square Enix will be ending season support for Foam Stars. If you are unfamiliar or don't remember, Foam Stars is Splatoon, basically, but Square Enix. So the next season update will effectively be its final one. There will be no more season updates after that period. So December 13th, the party goes on is the name of the update, which is pretty grim now with the news that there won't be any more party, but whatever. All online services will remain available after the season ends. Previous seasons will be made available again. So if you come to the game now, at least you'll still be able to get some of the older content. Foam Stars producer Kosuke Okatani reiterated that there will be no new content coming down the pipeline and thanked players for their interest. So, yeah. And there's another live service from a pretty big name, Square Enix, not managing to get any traction. Could could the big publishers just take that now? Just you've seen enough of them. I would have thought you'd have seen enough of them like last year and the year before that, failing and flopping. Can you just stop now? People have found their game. They found the live service game they want to play, and they don't have room for any more. Market saturation is what you would call it. Just stop. Go back to making the games that people like. Stop trying to make games that people don't want, and have now definitively shown you they don't want. Or at least don't have the time for. Because everyone who got out there early have made their games so grindy that you don't have time to play any other game. Maybe talk to them. Talk to your industry peers. Why did you make the game so grindy? Anyway, moving on. We have some slightly better news. At least the studio isn't shutting down. Ex-Disco Elysium devs, Darkmath Games secure investment. So we did have the big story about how there are 5 different Disco Elysium successor games on the horizon. So one of those that we talked about is headed by a former executive producer of a Disco Elysium, Karo Kender, who's had some... This is the guy you might recall who was using nude, or at least semi-nude, photos of his ex-wife as inspiration for characters in the game, and was showing them off to studio staff. Allegedly he was doing all of this, and he never said he wasn't necessarily. It's kind of funny that he didn't dispute that he was showing the photos. He disputed that she was nude. But anyway, I'm not entirely sure his ex-wife would have consented to these kind of things. Anyway, that guy. So that studio have gotten investment. It's a 7-figure sum. How much exactly, we don't know. It's a private company. They don't have to tell people. that still doesn't seem like a lot. Like, 1 million is a 7-figure sum, and 9.9 million, I suppose, is also a 7-figure sum. But even so, it's not like that would be a huge amount of money to me, like personally. But for like a video game development studio, that doesn't seem like much. But kind of interesting here. So MM Group, we're a majority investor in Disco Elysium. And we do know that Karakender, at least, and a lot of other former Disco Elysium, former Zaum alumni didn't exactly leave Zaum on the best footing. You know, there was a lot of vitriol for people leaving that. So having a former investor, a majority investor, also now coming into this game, I don't know. If I was an employee of Dark Math Games, I'd be feeling a little uneasy about it. Anyway, we'll see what happens with that. XXX Night Shift is the name of the game, and it is currently the only one that has like video and screenshots and stuff to show for it. The other successors, some have some concept art, some just have some ideas, so we don't necessarily know how long or how far into development they are. We do know that one of them is legally blocked from doing any development for the next while for shenanigans reasons. Go back 2 weeks ago, I think. Weekly news recap for that one. Anyway, last thing for the industry bullshit, which is, it's a good thing, but it's a bad thing that it has to happen. Anyway, GOG makes big promise on game preservation as Blizzard pulls Warcraft 1 and 2 from its store. So Blizzard have a remaster of Warcraft 1 and 2 that they are pushing, and to avoid people paying less for their games, they're going to delist them. The issue with that is GOG recently launched their games preservation program thing. So right now, because the games haven't been delisted yet, but right now the only way to get the original Warcraft 1 and 2 is either GOG or Battle.net, Blizzard's store, essentially. They're the only two places you can get it. So you can't get it on Steam or Epic or any of those. It's only GOG or Battle.net. But after they're like launching their kind of somewhat shit remasters, at least from what I've seen, fans of the original games are like, this remaster's not great. We'd prefer the original game to this. But Blizzard are moving ahead with just pushing the remaster out, mostly because they can charge more money for it. Anyway, GOG though do have Warcraft 1 and 2 as part of their DRM free program thing, and it's also in their game preservation program. So the question is, what happens now that the game has been delisted? Is it still going to be supported as part of the game's preservation program? Because the whole deal with the program is, even if OSs are updated and changed and would ordinarily make the game unplayable, GOG are going to keep the games up to date and make sure that they stay playable even on new OSs. The question then is, if the game has been delisted, are you still going to do that? So GOG said yes, they are going to keep doing that. Which is interesting, because that's obviously going to cost them money, and it's a real question if Blizzard are going to... Like, we're not entirely sure how the game preservation program works in the first place, because some developers and publishers just don't exist anymore for some of those games. Some of those games are very old, and some of those studios just don't exist anymore. So who's paying GOG to do these things? And is nobody paying GOG to do these things? Or are they doing it themselves? Who do they have permission from to work on some of these games that, again, we don't know who actually owns it anymore? Who knows? But anyway, for their part, for Warcraft 1 and 2, that will eventually be delisted, they are going to continue to work on it. So once a game joins the program, we pledge to maintain its compatibility even if it gets delisted from the store. This means that owners of those titles can still expect a seamless experience and tech support for those titles. This also considers potential changes in Windows OS that may impact games' playability. So yeah, no change. As far as they're concerned, it's in the program, it'll be maintained, whether it's on the store or not. So that's pretty good. So Blizzard are no longer going to be selling the $15 bundle of the original games, and instead they're going to push out the remasters, which are $25 each. Cool. And as pointed out in the article, this is the latest example of companies making it very hard for people to buy the original games and instead pushing out their newer, usually worse remasters because they half-assed the remaster. We've seen more than a few remasters and upscales and so on that are not great and kind of are worse, inferior versions of the original game. The original game would have been better. I would have preferred that, but you can't get it now. You can only get the remaster. Lame. Like, again, I do kind of bring back games preservation to how we preserve other media. How do we preserve film? How do we preserve TV? How do we preserve books, music, so on? The idea that you couldn't get the original version of something, the original version of Star Wars. Now, to be fair, trying to get the original version of Star Wars for a while was a pain in the ass. Because for a long time, you could only get the... I forget what we called them now, but they were the editions where George Lucas went back and added a bunch of special effect shit. Added a bunch of mess, basically, to the scene. He just added creatures in the background or added some CG elements that weren't in the original and stuff like that. There's a really egregious bit in Star Wars A New Hope where they put Jabba the Hutt in... they put him in the hangar with Han Solo, where he has the Millennium Falcon there. He's kind of talking around Jabba, and there's a bit where he walks around the back of Jabba the Hutt. In the original game, he's talking to a person, like a human being, human actor. And I think the deal, I can't even remember now if in the original or not, but I think in the original, he's like, he's not Jabba, he's like a spokesperson for Jabba or whatever. But in this CG thing that George Lucas did, it is actually Jabba. If you somehow are unfamiliar with who Jabba the Hutt is, he is a big giant slug thing. And slug thing has a big tail at the back, so when Han Solo walks around the back of him, in the original, it's a human actor. There's no tail to get in the way, so he can just walk through it, and it's perfectly normal. It's the way it was filmed. He just walks in a circle. In the CG thing, though, there's a tail in the way. So, obviously, they had to account for that. So what they do is they have Han Solo step on the tail. Instead, Jabba does a big shriek, and it's kind of a comedic thing. But the way they do it is they just move the frame of Harrison Ford up. And it looks awful. If you focus on just Harrison Ford in that scene, it looks terrible. That's probably the most obvious one. I think the one a lot of people know is they kept going back and forth on whether or not Han shot Greedo first, or if Greedo shot Han first, or what have you. And I think now they've settled on they've just both shot at the same time. The original Han shoots him first, because that's who Han Solo is. He's a scoundrel. That's this whole deal. Of course he shoots first. They changed it later that Greedo shoots Han first, and there's this horrible CG thing where they just have Harrison Ford's head just shunt to the side. Extremely unnatural looking, because that's not what happened. To make it seem like he's more heroic, it was self-defense instead of him just shooting Greedo in cold blood. He's a thief, scoundrel, smuggler guy. He's not meant to be squeaky clean. Anyway, my point is, when they fuck with the original, there would never be a case now where you wouldn't be able to get access to the original, or at least people would be extremely pissed about it and a little bit more vocal that you wouldn't be able to get the original theatrical release of something, or the original aired episode of a TV show, or the original print of a book, and that kind of thing. People would be, pissed about that kind of thing. And we just don't do the same thing for games. I don't think we get as pissed about it in games. And that's going to be a problem later on. A few years, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when we're trying to trace back the history of video games. and we just don't have. It's like a blank spot in the 80s, 90s. Anyway, moving on. Some things happening in the community. So, Sony trolling Bloodborne fans again. So, it was the PlayStation's 30th anniversary this week. They put out a video teaser thing that was like the sizzle reel of all these PlayStation games, a bunch of different scenes. And the message overlaid on all the video scenes was like, it's about it's about joy, it's about family, it's about various other things, various other sentiments. And the one they ended the video with Bloodborne. They don't have a picture of it, but they ended it with a handful of frames at the very end of the video showing the game's hunter, Bloodborne, in a fight with the words, "It's about persistence," flashing on the screen. So, you may be familiar with Bloodborne fans and their persistence with asking Sony for, where the fuck is Bloodborne 60 FPS patch for PS5? Where's the PC port of Bloodborne? Where's the remaster of Bloodborne? Where's Bloodborne 2? You know, all of these kind of things. Like, when more Bloodborne, please? Pretty much. Only, it's getting less with the please part. It's, you know, the period at the end is starting earlier in the sentence. Anyway, so this is being viewed as Sony trolling, basically, Bloodborne fans. Someone at PlayStation woke up and chose violence, etc., etc. There's the vain kind of copium. Actually, you can see the frame, the final frame of the video there. It's about persistence at the end. Yeah, the small amount of cope is that they're teasing that there'll be more Bloodborne, because they could have picked any game to end with, and there were a lot of games in that sizzle reel. They could have picked anything, and they went with Bloodborne specifically. You could read into that maybe they're teasing something, but you could also read into it that they are teasing you, as a troll would. Anyway, I'm on the side of, you know, Bloodborne 2 announcement at the Game Awards, but probably not. But, you know, whatever. We all cope in our different ways. Slightly shittier community things. I did say we wanted to talk a little bit more about Infinite Nikki. Infinite Nikki website hacked with abusive messages to players shortly after launch. So, the game released earlier this week, but the website itself was hacked, and reports of users being met with a distressing and distasteful message. I won't put up the message myself here. It's not in the article either. You'll have to click into the Reddit link to see it. But it basically amounts to, you know, KYS kind of stuff. Anyway, so the message is that, and then it was also promoting a private server for Genshin Impact, which is, you know, a competing game, shall we say, for Infinity Nikki, because they're both Gashapon type games. There's no evidence that the message posted was from a member from the Genshin Impact community, and so on and so forth. I'm kind of assuming it wouldn't have been, because Genshin Impact's developer does not look kindly upon private servers for their game. And there's no way anyone on a private server would want any just randos joining it, so unlikely it's from the Genshin Impact community, what have you. Anyway, it's obviously a very shitty thing to do to people. The message in itself, hacking a game that had just come out, and like, who's this? It's not benefiting anybody. Could you not use your skills for good? No. Anyway, it was only compromised for less than an hour, so like, it's not a huge deal, but it's also just, it's just very shit. It's just a very shitty thing to do. And I put it in the community things because it is the video game community. Like, as much as we can mention that, oh, there are, you know, bad elements of the video game community, what have you, it is still our community. I don't want them to be part of it, but they are. And you can the only way to get them out is to speak up about it. So here's me doing my part for whatever it will do. Anyway, We'll leave indie to loop, I suppose. This is probably the biggest game released this week. Anyway, so that was your news, your weekly news recap for the 2nd to the 8th of December 2024. Pretty lengthy for the PC Gamer showcase. It was a fairly long showcase itself. It's about 2.5 hours or so. 80 games, including their 25 most wanteds that I still had an issue with the games on it because we know so little about it. You could have showcased any other type of games. You know, why pick the ones that we know basically nothing about? And the ones that are going to get a huge amount of marketing anyway. You know, you could have showcased them. You could have showcased some other games. That's all. Anyway, I guess they did their best with the other games that they put in the showcase. You know, it wasn't just those 25 games, and they did show off a couple other interesting indies and some games that are coming soon. Some of them that are going to be a while off. Game Pass this month seems pretty good. Only if you're on Ultimate. The standard edition Game Pass thing, you're only getting... Well, you're getting Haunty, which is pretty good. And Humanity is also a pretty decent Lemmings game. But Lemmings is... The Lemmings style game isn't for everybody. It can be a bit stressful, I do get that. But yeah, unless you're on Ultimate, you're not getting Crash Team Racing, you're not getting Indiana Jones, you're not getting... card game. I forget what it's called now. Yeah. It's not great. It's not great. I mean, it is now kind of on par with PlayStation Plus, how the PlayStation Plus catalog works. But it's almost somewhat reversed, I guess, because the PlayStation Plus catalog, the cheaper version tends to get the better stuff, and the more expensive version tends to get the more niche things. Is that a better way to do it? I don't know. Consumer-wise, yeah, it is a better way to do it. I'm not sure if it is better for the company itself. Anyway, who cares? It's better for the consumer. Anyway, moving on. A lot of new releases. Indiana Jones, Infinity Nikki, Archons, Caves of Cud, Thing Remastered, a bunch of ports that I'm quite interested in giving a shot at. I'm sure I've missed a few games. There were a lot of new game releases. Fantasian is out of the Apple Arcade mines, so that's pretty good. Apple Arcade's prison, that I don't think Apple are really doing anything with anymore. I'm not sure. Have they added new games to that at any point? Anything interesting, at least? Anyway, industry bullshit. It's coming to the end of the year, so a lot of studios will either be wrapping up, you know, for the holiday break, or trying to keep things under wraps before the Game Awards. So it's quiet enough, but hearing like all of those layoffs again, all at the end of the year, some of them just after some games have released, it's so shit. I think we have the total is somewhere around 20,000 layoffs now between this year and last year, which it's essentially when the industry had its downturn, beginning of 2023. So it's not great. It's not great to hear, and it's again the wrong people on the receiving end of it. It's capitalism. It's somewhat nihilistic to just say, yeah, them's the breaks. I mean, there's not a whole lot I could do about it. Just have to have the developers unionize. That's really all. That's all that can really be done. Anyway, yeah, I don't think there's anything else to really talk about. Anyway, what's happening elsewhere on the channel? As you probably are aware, streaming has been not happening for a good while now. I am planning to get back into it. I've had some PC issues for the last while. I have a new PC on the way, so hoping to get that, you know, sorted and set up and move all my stuff across and move all my OPS profiles and all that shit. Make sure I don't miss anything, and it's gonna take a bit. And I do have a day job, so you know I have to fit it around all of that. We'll get back to it when we get back to it. It might end up being next year. It might end up being next year before we're back to streaming games rather than game news. But yeah, I'm working on it. Anyway, I'm gonna head off. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully talk to you next time. I guess. And whatever. Have a good one. Bye.